coverage of events on the ground, brings you the news as it breaks. Ongoing coverage of the Libya uprising on Al Jazeera.
Rhythms of resistance.
A part of the struggle and popular resistance is art. Through my art, I resist. Resistance is my art, and my art is my war.
Musicians using music as a way to maintain their cultural identity.
I believe that when I sing to the world, I portray Palestine through my voice, my singing, and my songs.
Songs from the lost homeland. At this time, on Al Jazeera.
It was a revolution which ended half a century of autocratic rule and inspired a wave of public protest that swept across the Arab world.
Internet, Facebook, Twitter, they were not the revolution.
In an exclusive two-part documentary, Raghi Omar traces the roots and repercussions of this uprising and examines why 23 years of dictatorship fell in only 28 days. The death of fear at this time on Al Jazeera.
Life, misfortunes, isolation, abandonment, poverty are battlefields which have their heroes, obscure heroes, sometimes greater than the illustrious heroes.
This is Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the News Hour. I'm Darren Jordan from Al Jazeera's news centres here in Doha, and live from Libya, Tunisia, Egypt and China. These are the top stories. The battle for Libya, fresh fighting in AlJazeera, is said to leave dozens dead as Gaddafi loyalists and opponents fight for this strategic city. Rebels are in complete control of oil-rich Brega in the east of the country.
We engaged carrying light weapons and a helicopter started shelling us from above. Still, victory will be ours.
And down but not out, rebel fighters in Ras Lanuf brace for more clashes. Meanwhile, a different battle, one for food and fuel. We take a look at how the uprising is leaving some Libyans short of both. In other news, cutting corruption and raising wages, China's premier outlines his targets for the coming year. Welcome to the programme. Opposition fighters say a massacre has been taking place in the town of AlJazeera. Forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi have launched a new attack on the opposition-held city close to the capital, Tripoli. Witnesses have been describing heavy civilian casualties as the Libyan forces have moved in. Well, for 3 weeks, Libyans have been locked in clashes between supporters of Gaddafi and those who want him gone. Let's take a look at the key flashpoints so far. In Tripoli, Gaddafi's men continue to crack down on any hint of dissent. But as you just heard, the most brutal fighting at the moment is taking place in AlJazeera. It began with a dawn attack by loyalists trying to retake the town, pounding opposition fighters with mortar rounds and heavy machine gun fire. Well, government tanks are reportedly rolling through the streets and the battle is far from over. We'll hear from witnesses in a moment. Opposition fighters say they've taken the oil town of Ras Lanuf, that's in the east, after fierce clashes. On Saturday, they've fired at government helicopters and set up checkpoints around the town. In the rebel stronghold of Benghazi, 17 people died when an ammunition dump exploded. The blast may have happened when opposition fighters were raiding the store, but they're blaming pro-Gaddafi forces for the explosion. Well, Lawrence Lee takes a look now at the ongoing battle for Libya.
This is the sound of a town fighting to avoid being overrun.
What is happening now is heavy bombing on the city by tanks and heavy weapons and mortars and extremely heavy weapons. And the rebels are struggling to resist with very primitive means. And they have no mercy. They're very brutal. There's a large number of injured and a lot of people killed on the streets. They have no mercy on civilians. The tanks that belong to the regime are attacking anything and everything indiscriminately.
The Gaddafi security forces are gathering up at the outskirts of the city and preparing for another attack. And the revolutionaries here are bracing themselves and reorganizing their lines to prepare themselves to defend the city.
Undoubtedly, the suggestion of AlJazeera being gradually taken back by Gaddafi will be seen as a sign that he's regaining ground, although it's a mixed picture. The rebels, for instance, still claim to hold Ras Lanouf, where they say they have Gaddafi's forces on the back foot.
We are on the move to liberate our country. We are going to liberate Ras Lanouf from the dogs belonging to Gaddafi. Those bastards are a bunch of mercenaries.
And Brega, further east, also still seems to be out of Gaddafi's control. Two things are becoming clear. First of all is that increasingly the fighting's being concentrated around oil towns, which it's hardly surprising Gaddafi's so keen to reclaim, while his assets are being seized all over Europe. His forces are also keen to destroy arms dumps in the hands of rebels. This one went up in flames in Benghazi, although it's not clear how. Secondly is that the fighting's becoming harder, and all the reports from the frontline towns suggest more people being killed than in previous days. The main reason why the two sides in this are so deadlocked is because neither is strong enough. But all the same, it's hardly surprising that the words civil war are beginning to appear more frequently to describe what's happening in Libya. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Well, these are the latest pictures from Brega. That's in the east of the country. It's a key oil hub. Witnesses say at least 24 people were killed in clashes there on Friday. The rebels say they're now in complete control of the city and its oil terminal. Well, joining me now in the studio is Tariq Youssef, Dean at the Dubai School of Government. He's also Libyan and hails from the city of Benghazi. Tariq, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us this morning. Now, let's just talk about these battles. We've seen lots of these small-pitched battles take place in areas like Brega, AlJazeera, Ras Lanouf. Talk us through the strategic importance of these towns. Why are they happening in these areas?
Zawiya is of prime importance to Gaddafi's regime, in part because it's west of Tripoli. It's sort of squeezed between Tripoli, where he has full control, and other parts of the west where control is not so solid. So retaking back what is probably the fourth or the fifth largest city by population size. It also has a refinery that supplies a lot of refined products to Tripoli and neighboring areas. So Zawiya has both a population center, demographic importance, but also an oil refined products importance. It's also fairly close to Tripoli, so sending out a bunch of armored vehicles, tanks is not so difficult, although we've seen and we've heard from witness accounts that the battle there is not exactly over, and it seems to be going back and forth. The forces loyal to Gaddafi are on the outskirts of the city, and rebels or the opposition is essentially controlling the center and defending the city.
So are we seeing a battle for the middle ground, as it were? You've got Gaddafi and his forces in Tripoli, you've got the opposition rebels in Benghazi, and they're trying to work out what's happening in the middle ground between the two.
Precisely. I would say the battle in the east is firmly set. It's now beginning to stretch west. So movement to Brega